2020 budget. It is Thursday, the 13th day of June. This is News Center. My name is Michelle Ngele Odhiambo. Like I mentioned, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich will today unveil spending plans for the 2019-2020 financial year that will begin on the 1st of July. He will be indicating how his ministry plans to fund the 3.02 trillion shilling budget, and this is likely to be through a raft of new taxes as well as loans in the country. But we'll be looking at how Kenyans feel about this. Our reporters are stationed all across the country to give you live details as we anticipate that budget reading at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Stanley Mbichu will be joining us live from Murang'a with the expectations of residents there. We also have Tobias Chanji stationed in Mombasa to give us a coastal perspective as the budget is unveiled today. Mark Namaswa is keeping an eye for us in the Nairobi Central Business District, and Malika Kazia is live for us from Parliament, where the budget will be unveiled this afternoon. Let's take a look now at what else you yourself are expecting. And we're asking you on our Twitter poll question this morning, what are your expectations in today's budget? What are your expectations in today's budget? Just speak to us. The hashtag is KTN News Center. You can also speak to us directly at Michelle Ngele or at KTN News Kenya. Well, let's now take a look at what is happening on the ground in Parliament. Malika Kazia joins us live with the expectations there. Malika, good morning. A big day there for the country with the National Treasury set to lay out this budget. But what is expected? How is the National Treasury likely to fund this 3.02 trillion shilling budget?
Yes, a very good morning, Michelle. It is this day, the budget day. It's finally come, and we are here, of course, bringing you all the latest details from Parliament. And like you mentioned earlier, the budget has been estimated to be at 3.02 trillion. Now, that is already a mammoth amount, but the deficit has been estimated to already have, been at about 607 billion shillings. Now, in order to ensure that this deficit is covered, already we do know that from external financing they're expected to take on about 324.3 billion, from domestic borrowing about 289 billion shillings. So if we look at the budget when it comes to the consolidated fund service, about 805.8 billion is supposed to go towards that, and that means a majority of that amount, 805 billion, is going to go to debt repayment. So it almost seems like we are digging one hole to fill another at this point, almost a catch-22 situation where you have the deficit that you need to fill. You've already allocated such a major chunk of the existent money in order to repay the existent debt, and we keep on getting more to fill the deficit. So it's almost a catch there in terms of how this is going to play out, and we'll see what the CS has to say, of course, during the reading today. But another thing that we're expecting to go up in terms of how they're going to ensure that they meet the amount that they require in terms of how they've outlined the budget is, of course, tightening on taxes. Now, KRA's target as of 2018-2019 budget was about 1.69 trillion shillings. As of April 30th, they had about 1.6 trillion. So we are expecting that KRA is going to tighten the noose on a lot of factors, including the basics like customs duty. We look at VAT, we look at income tax as well. And that is going to pinch the pockets of Kenyans, and in a lot of ways, especially when we look at the SMEs and when we look at online businesses, there has been some indication, there have been some jitters that perhaps this will be the next phase that is going to be taxed. Now, online businesses, SMEs especially, are a way that majority of youth are trying to ensure that they fill in, the gaps when it comes to unemployment, where they are trying to gainfully earn a living through these means. So is that also now going to come under a lot of pressure with the added tax implications that we are expecting? We will see how that plays out as well. But also when it comes to import duties and it comes to, materials coming into the country. It's again supposed to be something that the KRA will focus on in order to ensure that they're able to meet this mammoth target that the Treasury expects it to fill in terms of accumulating revenues to fuel the budget. But if we look at some of the other allocations, we look at the counties especially, we're seeing about 371.6 billion is to be allocated to counties. Just this week, we did have representatives from the counties saying that for the devolved units to function at their optimum, for them to serve the purpose that they were intended to, they need to ensure that they have adequate funding for them to be able to manage that. So we will see whether or not they are happy with the allocations that come through for these devolved units. But another point that has been noted majorly is the fact that we have recurrent expenditure, and there is a lot of money that has been allocated for that. And it seems that that treadmill continues to go where we are servicing debt, we are having recurrent expenditures. So then how are we going to grow further? Is it just going to put even more pressure on Kenyans with regards to taxes? But are we going to see the results that are required to sustain the level of spending and level of debt accumulation that the government has already been used to? Michelle.
Right, and Malika, even as we take a look at that, what do the top four, the big four priority areas for President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration there get? Affordable housing, manufacturing, universal healthcare, as well as food security.
Yes, absolutely. The Big Four agenda is also set to get about 450 billion shillings off the budget. Things like manufacturing, we've seen estimated to receive about 125 billion shillings. And especially when it comes to the goals that have been set out for things like manufacturing, they wanted to contribute about 15% to the GDP. Right now, it's about contributing 8.2%. And already, manufacturers from various sectors have talked about things that they need to tighten in order to ensure that manufacturing within the country is actually sustainable. It's actually something that can be sustained throughout in order to keep on generating this amount of revenue that it is expected to. So already within the budget, if we're seeing manufacturing set to get 125 billion, then definitely we expect that it's going to bolster that industry and sort of feed back to the GDP and fuel the economy as well. But there's also the issue of currency. Aside from the Big Four, the issue of currency, and a major amount that the CBK wants to lock down on is that which is out of the system. That is the things they've done by discontinuing the 1,000 shilling note by October, that they're trying to tighten that circulation of perhaps even counterfeit money within the system, and to ensure that we're having that smooth flow. So already we have seen some sort of measures come into play in order to ensure that the money within circulation is regulated, it is actually tangible in terms of the economic growth that we're expecting to feel. And other factors of the Big Four agenda that we have seen, of course, will receive a major chunk include affordable healthcare. Now, already if you have Kenyans on average earning about minimum wage at 13,000 basically, and they have to chip in so much when it comes to extraneous health circumstances, it is very, very precarious for them to be able to maintain that. So already the allocations to the Big Four agenda we are seeing are going to be mammoth, and that will hopefully improve the quality of life for ordinary Kenyans. But at the same time, are we seeing that the noose that KRA will tighten on Kenyans is going to be counterproductive? So it's almost this tedious balance that we want to see how it will play out in the budget today.
Malika, finally, when taking a look at this year's budget, a mammoth figure there, like you mentioned, but it is still a 4.2% reduction compared to last year's budget, or the previous budget rather. So Kenyans would then expect that taxation, for example, and the cost of living would still go down. Explain this irony to us now that Kenyans are expecting, tougher times ahead to finance this budget.
All right. Yeah, totally. I think there are a lot of Kenyans who are expecting doom and gloom from this year's budget, although, like you said, there is a slight reduction comparatively. Although we are seeing that this is possibly the highest budget that we have seen since independence. And I think in a lot of sense, Kenyans themselves are waiting to see how it will play out for them in a lot of areas, whether we're talking taxes, whether we're talking day-to-day, expenditure and inflation. If we talk about inflation, we have seen it go up to 5.9% 5.4% as of May this year. Already the cost of living, commodities has gone up. There, whether you're looking at fuel, whether you're looking at sugar, you're seeing a lot of rises in so many areas that ordinary Kenyans need to access in order to ensure that they're living a quality of life that is fair and that is good. So I think the overall emotional climate for Kenyans before the budget is anxious, and they're waiting to see how else, whether or not the expectations from how the budget is going to play out is going to be something that's going to reduce the cost of living or not, and we'll see how that plays out already in light of the inflation rates that we have seen going up.